and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Michael Musto. I'm channeling Ann Northrup, angry, informed lesbian. That's what I'm going to be today.
Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Andy.
And before we get to the headlines, let's bring everybody up to date with you.
Well, in May, I was laid off from the Village Voice. Boo, boo. But things happen so quickly nowadays, Andy, that by the time they even officially called me in to lay me off, I already had 2 new columns lined up. So I now do a weekly column called Musto the Musical on Out.com.
Musto the Musical.
Because everything is the musical nowadays, even if it isn't. And my column is quite musical. It's a gossip column similar to my old Voice column, but with even more of an LGBT slant. It comes out on Monday and it's on the homepage all week.
Okay, and I follow you on Facebook all the time where you're constantly posting the most interesting stuff.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I also have a weekly column on Gawker.com called Next Question with Michael Musto, which we can talk about later. I interviewed Calvin Klein's ex recently for that.
Yes, well, let's talk about what's going to be on the news, including things you're going to be telling us about. And of course, in the news, you know, some of the biggest news this week was that Bradley Manning has announced that she is transitioning to Chelsea Manning.
We'll also talk about the murders of transgender women in Harlem, New York, and Fontana, California.
San Diego has a new acting mayor, out gay Todd Gloria.
Meanwhile, out lesbian Christine Quinn sweeps the endorsements of New York's 3 major daily newspapers in her bid for the Democratic nomination for mayor.
In New Mexico, there are now 6 counties where same-sex couples can marry.
LGBT issues integrated into the rally and march in Washington, commemorating the 50th anniversary of the 1963 March on Washington.
I was there. I'll tell you about it.
I bet you were.
We will tell you.
You're a young kid, though.
Oh, I wasn't. No, I wasn't there at 63. I could have been, though. We'll tell you about all the latest on the struggle against Russia's anti-gay laws. You cannot believe what's going on. Well,
Don't
maybe
get
you
me
can.
started. Ugh.
Maybe you can.
A victory in Minnesota over the criminalization of HIV transmission.
I'll give you my review of Soul Doctor on Broadway, and Michael may chime in on that because he saw the off-Broadway production.
I didn't choose to see it again, but it has its merits. The Video Music Awards honor a pro-gay anthem. It was very powerful.
And Michael is going to tell us about an interview he did with Jane Lynch. He's going to comment on Richard Simmons in drag, shocking news, and Nick Gruber, who was with Calvin Klein for a while, and well, you're going to tell us all about him.
It's juicy.
Okay, well, we start with Chelsea Manning, who last week we were calling Bradley Manning.
Right.
But, you know, we knew, of course, everybody knows that Bradley Manning was sentenced to 35 years in prison for leaking to WikiLeaks and all that kind of stuff. But made an announcement this week, says, I am Chelsea Manning, I am female. And is
which is something I've said very often. No, but you know what? The media was kind of falling all over itself as to how to approach this, and it's quite easy. You just say Chelsea Manning, female, she.
And the Associated Press sort of changed its policy just for Chelsea and is going along with that.
Because they got into a lot of flap, remember?
Yeah.
About something else.
Absolutely. Now, but here's the issue. Now, of course, we heard that transgender was one of the issues that Chelsea was dealing with all along. You know, and this came up in the trial. But the Army is saying, no, you got to go to an all-male prison and forget about hormone replacement therapy, no sex reassignment or gender reassignment surgery for it. The lawyers for Chelsea are trying to change that. Now, Manning received this diagnosis in May 2000 before her arrest. You know,
what diagnosis?
2010, I'm sorry. The diagnosis of gender identity, disorder is what it's called, you know, was 2010, I'm sorry, I was misreading my notes. But an Army legal expert says if he fears for his safety, he can be put in isolation or protective custody. This is what they're offering in terms of...
That's really big of them. Well, we finally got rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and now the Army is going to have to change their views on male-female.
Absolutely.
Chelsea's female, should not be in an all-male facility, obviously. Chelsea, I believe, is in Leavenworth.
Yes.
Where Chelsea's been told that the hormone therapy and all that stuff is not covered.
Right.
We can handle maybe a certain amount of therapy, perhaps?
Yes, counseling.
Counseling,
You can
but
get
not
counseling.
physical therapy. Well, that has to be changed. I mean, Chelsea needs complete
Well,
treatment from head to toe.
And one of the things the lawyer wants is maybe to put her in a federal prison. There's some precedent for this. It rarely happens, but they take someone out of the Army prison and put them in a federal prison. All right. Now, you remember Kristen Beck, the transgender former Navy SEAL who was a warrior princess? Well, she says, I'm fighting for equality, dignity, respect, and this person, Manning, is doing the opposite. That's nice. I mean, here's someone who's often war, in what I consider an illegal war, killing people. I mean, certainly following orders and everything, and maybe doing it very well. But attacking someone who was exposing, the horrible situation in the war in terms of war crimes and all that other kind of stuff. So, I mean,
well, you have a ritualized killer versus someone who leaked important documents. Whatever they do, I wish these transsexuals would get along. We all have to stick together.
Well, there's a lot of dust up about this. Kirsten Beck also said, uninformed people, because of this, with Chelsea Manning, are going to link gender identity to emotional stability, intellectual capacity, and so on. Well, I mean, certainly going through this transition was a problem for Chelsea, and that was one of the reasons that she gave at the trial. I'm going to get used to this.
She gave at the trial.
She gave at the trial to,
well,
in terms of
transgender
defense.
people are like any LGBT people. In fact, all people. They come in all different types, and we have to embrace each other.
Yeah.
I've often written about transgender people and had some representative from GLAAD say, that's not right. And it's like, well, I'm writing about a particular person, and that's the way they are. Transgender people are all types. Some of them have emotional problems. Most of them don't. But
yeah. No, we did a show at the end of the year with someone who was transgender, who's obviously out about it and was doing that on the show. But one of the things that she woke us up to was the fact that most transgender people, they just want to pass as the other gender. They don't want to go through their life saying, I'm transgender. They want to be what they become. And
that's why I often don't even want to write about people as transgender. I just want to say she because, or he, because it goes both ways. Because I don't think they wake up and say, hi, I'm transgender. How will I live my transgender day?
Right.
They're a person.
Right.
They're male, they're female, human.
Right. Well, anyway, the New York Times is on Chelsea's side and calls the military callous in this. Some military doctors do provide hormone prescriptions just because they're young and they know they're hip and they know what to do. And some federal courts have ruled that withholding these treatments violates the Eighth Amendment prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment.
I would agree with that.
So they asked Jay Carney about this, Obama's spokesperson, and he said...
she said. No, I'm kidding.
We don't know. I didn't ask Jay, but that could be... wouldn't respond to the question about the hardship that Chelsea's going to face now in prison.
Obama will only go so far when it comes to taking care of us.
We'll see. Although, actually, we could talk about it later. They're having a bisexual conference at the White House. Did you read about this? But it's behind closed doors. They're not telling us who's going. It's off the record. But it's real. It sounds like a way to.
I think it's because Hillary's throwing it. No, these are jokes, folks.
That's okay. It keeps us going. But we turned from the situation of Chelsea Manning, which is very serious, to a couple of murders
horrifying.
that have taken place this week. Well, we told you about the attack on Elon, I-S-L-A-N Nettles. We have a picture of Elon there, 21 years old, who was beaten in Harlem by some people who were shouting anti-transgender slurs, saying he, she, and she-males, and all that kind of stuff. And
this is obviously a hate crime. It's being investigated as a hate crime, and it's really horrifying that in New York City something like this could still happen.
Right.
In fact, hate crimes are up in New York right now, and I think it's partly because the farther we go, the more progress we make, the more the haters want to hate, because they feel their power being dwindled from them.
But I mean, our progress in New York is like ancient. I mean, I realize more stuff has happened lately.
Oh no, we got gay marriage last year, remember?
2011.
Okay,
New York.
it seems like last year.
No,
but every day we're moving forward and getting more of a place at the table.
But this is such a sad story. I mean, it turned into a homicide. They did arrest a guy, 20-year-old Harlem man named Paris Wilson. There was one report from the AP that Wilson was being investigated for propositioning Elon. I mean, whether it turned out
could be like a crying game, real life crying game.
I don't know what it is.
Like what?
But this was a group murder. And there was a huge turnout of about 500 people last night in Harlem to vigil. Elon's mother was very supportive, loved her baby. And, Elon was, an assistant designer at AY''Medici, iMedici, a Harlem fashion company. She was walking with a group of transgender friends when this happened on 147th and Frederick Douglass. But she had a very, very promising life and career. And the story in the Times says that there's an emerging gay and transgender community up there that's becoming more and more visible up there in Harlem. And yet,
that's where voguing was born. It was always there. I hate to tell you.
I know, and then this happens. And then the other murder is of a transgender YouTube star named Dominique Newburn, who was brutally murdered August 20th, found outside her home. The suspect fled in a car of the Hollywood houseboy
Dominique's
star.
car, yes.
Yeah,
and Dominique wanted to be a star. She wanted to be the first transgender artist to have a hit record on iTunes. She had already built up a following on YouTube in web series. We can't really say what the motivation, if any, was here. It was some kind of domestic disturbance. It was somebody she knows.
That's the way they reported it, yes. But I mean, the question is why these things often end up in violence or murders and all those kinds of things. I mean, but this was someone.
So we don't know if it was a hate crime, but in any case, it was horrific.
So we don't know. But we'll be following, and well, they don't have a suspect in that case, right? But they do in the New York case, and we'll be following it and see that justice is done. Well, let's talk a little bit about politics. Well, first of all, we've got a gay mayor of San Diego. Do you have a take on
acting mayor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Although, as Rex Wagner wrote, he was sending this around, and he said, "We have a gay acting mayor," and people took issue with this.
As
what do you mean
opposed
he's
to a
gay
straight
acting?
mayor. Like Ed Koch was a straight acting mayor.
Was he?
Not very. He didn't do very well there.
But all right. So, do you have a take on
Filner.
Bob Filner, who resigned over all these sexual harassment charges?
Well, he's really a serial sexual harasser. I mean, this shout out to Anthony Weiner. You can't get away with this. This was beyond sexting pictures of his privates. I mean, he openly came on to.
He was pawing people
inappropriately
constantly,
to
all
women.
that kind of stuff. And I think he went away for a couple of days to rehab, and then came back and still wanted to be mayor. But
all you need is 2 days. Lindsay Lohan teaches you that, doesn't she? 2 days, you come back, you're fine.
Anyway,
No.
the gay acting mayor is Todd Gloria, who was the city council president. But this is the second gay acting mayor in San Diego history. They had Toni Atkins, T-O-N-I, a woman,
Right.
in 2005, and
Well,
she's
it's California.
she's the new Assembly Majority Leader. Well, again, to quote Rex Wagner, who feeds us a lot of these stories, everybody thinks like San Diego is this old conservative bastion, Republican, but it's quite a liberal. I mean, I've never
Not that
I've
far
never
from
been.
LA.
You been?
It's not far from LA. I've driven through it.
Okay.
And I said, keep going.
Oh, come on.
Take me to Hollywood.
All right.
But this proves that you can't get away with stuff, and anything that allows for a gay or an acting gay person to take a position of power is fine with me.
Oh, well, all the newspapers in New York seem to want to facilitate Christine Quinn, the out
Yes.
lesbian speaker of the city council, to
Good
be the next mayor of New
segue.
York. Well, I mean, I was kind of surprised that they all did it, and they all did it fast. I had actually heard a story that Billy Thompson, who was the former comptroller and ran against Bloomberg the last time and almost beat him, was ready to get the endorsement of the news. It was like going to happen. But apparently Bloomberg interceded with Mort Zuckerman, who owns that paper, and said, the establishment has settled on Christine Quinn.
Which just proves the kind of corruption behind her and some of these endorsements, which are why a lot of LGBT people don't favor her. By the way, she got the endorsements of the New York Times, New York Daily News, and New York Post. That's
Yes.
pretty much a clean sweep.
Yes.
What about the Wall Street Journal?
I don't know. Do they make endorsements? They might make endorsements
Okay.
in local races. I mean, don't forget there is a Republican primary here too. So here's the story, folks, on this New York race. The primary is September 10th.
Right.
That's the Democratic primary. But if nobody gets 40% of the vote, there's a runoff. And everybody was expecting a runoff. And I still think there probably will be, because there are at least three very strong candidates: Bill de Blasio, Christine Quinn, Billy Thompson. And
I'm not hearing Weiner's name here.
No, he's fallen off the charts.
But he just won't drop out.
Well-
If he did, it would help my candidate, Bill de Blasio, who I co-hosted
yeah.
a Benefit for with Cynthia Nixon, Alan Cumming, all the freaks.
But it may But if there's a runoff, you get down to 2, and then you get to
Okay.
decide, and you see what happens.
I'm sorry to say, I think Christine's going to get it.
She's going to go the whole way.
Yeah, I mean, with 3 endorsements, and people think she's in there, she's commodified, she's in a position of power already, she's comfortable.
Well, again, not commenting on the merits of the candidates, I've always told people that we do not decide who gets to be mayor. The establishment decides because there's so much real estate money, financial industry, all that kind of stuff. They do not leave this to chance. And if, they will use their front pages to try to destroy you. Now, they're trying to do that to Elliot Spitzer, who I'm not fond of. I mean, I don't hate him, but I'm not fond of him because of the way he started his career. He used to be pretty conservative. But, they ran pictures on the front page of him with his pants down, because he's leading in the polls over Scott Stringer, who basically, I guess people don't know, is the Manhattan Borough president, running for comptroller of the city of New York.
And I think they got confused and ran wiener shots, and it was like, no, Spitzer. I don't know, it's all such a mess. But one thing I'm proud of our community is that just because Christine Quinn is an out lesbian doesn't mean that the community on a whole is saying we need her to be mayor to represent us.
Yeah.
We're smart enough now and have enough representation to know just because she's an out lesbian doesn't make her the best candidate necessarily.
So, I mean, I still think there's an element of people who would take great pride in having someone break through this way and be
She'd
kind
be
of
the
a role.
first female mayor,
That's
first
true.
out gay mayor.
We've never had a
2
woman.
landmarks there.
Never had a woman mayor in New
But
York.
is that a reason to vote for someone? It would be nice, but not if it's Christine Quinn. She's the one who turned St. Vincent's into a Chipotle or whatever it's going to be.
No, but I was
co-op.
just in Washington D.C. and I was going down DuPont on whatever the main street is, Connecticut Avenue, and with a friend, and I said, "Oh, this is really gay around here." And the old gay bar, the big gay bar, is a Chipotle, literally.
On the Fruit Loop? That's what they call it in DuPont Circle.
Yes, I didn't find any gay bars there. I mean, I wasn't looking closely.
Maybe Christine's mayor there too.
It's really changed.
I think Christine Quinn would give us more Bloombergism. There'd be more monitoring
Well, I mean,
how
she
big
is.
your
I
soda
mean,
is going to be.
She is the one who engineered a vote in the city council to overturn term limits, which had been voted by the people twice, and that allowed Bloomberg to get a
But funny, this
third
time she's like,
term.
you know what? He shouldn't get a 4th term. I should get my 1st term. It's amazing how that works.
All right. Finishing up on politics, Cory Booker, who's the mayor of Newark, and he just got the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate, which will be played out in October. He was asked by the Washington Post basically if he was gay. And he said, "So what does it matter if I am?"
Good answer.
He says, "So be it. I hope you are not voting for me because you make the presumption that I'm straight," which is a pretty good answer.
Sounds straight to me.
Pretty good answer. Except somebody posted this article and they said, "Well, wait a minute on Cory Booker. He is associated with the Metro Baptist Church in Newark, which is one of the most virulently anti-gay churches in the country."
A self-loathing homosexual? A hypocritical politician? You're kidding me. You're kidding me, Andy. But remember when I used to be crucified back in the 80s for asking people if they were gay or saying they were gay? Oh, they would line me up and shoot me by firing squad. But now, serious newspapers are allowed to just ask that as a question. That's another wonderful advance that I'm proud to see.
I mean, we're gonna get into that with celebrities, and we're gonna talk about some who have come out even this week. But it's getting to the point where it's not news anymore, almost.
Because it's not dirty anymore. They can ask that because it's not a smear tactic anymore. And that's a great thing I'm glad I lived to see.
Well, we always had Ed Koch here in New York, who would never answer the question, and
He died in the closet.
And we have Kevin Spacey, who's sort of taken his chair. Who does a lot
There
of
are
great
all
work.
kinds of people.
Who does a lot of great work, but I mean, can you still? I mean, I guess you can still say, "I'm not going to answer that question."
Sure, they can say whatever they want.
Yes, and you can.
That's showbiz.
And you can report on it. All right, let's talk about some other stories. Okay, in the one of the things that happened with the immigration situation, the immigration bill, right? The big holdup with the immigration bill was we were going to be included. They were going to include foreign partners, but now that's all covered by because the Defense of Marriage Act is dead. So now the Catholic Church is totally on board and is going to make a big push on September the 8th, and they don't have us to complain about. So I don't know what the right wing's going to come up with, but it looks like that bill's going to get through. All right. I was down in Washington for the 50th anniversary of the commemoration of the March on Washington, and I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I kind of went at the last minute because I thought I should go, I should be there and everything like that. And what I found was the audience, the people who showed up were almost entirely African American. I mean, it was vast majority. And I thought all these years of people saying, "Oh, we love Martin Luther King, isn't he great? Blah, 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 blah. Where's everybody else?" I mean, it's great that so many African Americans turned up, But I also didn't see a huge gay presence, you know, in terms of organized stuff, even though everybody endorsed it. But I don't think they can mobilize anybody to come
But
to
I'm
these
sure there
things.
were a lot of gays in the
Oh,
crowd.
sure,
anyway.
sure, mixed in, but not as an identifiable group.
Right.
On the other hand, from the podium, all the speakers, John Lewis, Al Sharpton, you know, everybody was integrating gay issues into their thing, into their talks, as part of what they were. Yeah, it's like not controversial anymore, and they get big hands and big applause when they do it. So that's.
I like the way these minority fights are being joined together, even though it's not always visible. Harvey Weinstein is promoting the movie The Butler, of course, about the African American butler in the White
Yes.
House. And at the premiere that I went to, Harvey mentioned in his intro that there was some important gay decisions that were made recently by the Supreme Court, and how it reflected on the movie. So it tied the two together.
Interesting.
I do think we should. I should have gone. I'm ashamed that I didn't go to
No,
this.
no, no. You know what inspired me to go? People are gonna hate to see this. The Butler. I mean, The Butler is about the civil rights movement, basically. I mean, it was so moving in that respect and showing you all that kind of stuff. And I just said, I think I've got to go. I mean, it was just a last-minute decision. On
Well,
my,
when
on
Oprah
my
not only
part.
endorses it, but is in it, you go. Oprah decides everything we do, even now without
I
a
have
talk
to
show.
say, there were some women on the bus coming back with me who I thought could have played that role better. No, I thought Oprah was very good. But you know, I mean,
Maybe in the sequel.
maybe in the sequel. What is the sequel to The Butler?
Butler 2.
Do they still?
This time he's retired.
Do they have a more integrated butler staff at the White House now? Do they still have a butler staff? I guess they do.
Oh, gosh.
All right, but
Disturbing.
the Republican National Committee had a commemoration of 50th anniversary as well, and they had an African American speaker named Bob Woodson who told the audience that gays and immigrants have been prioritized over blacks. Everybody has come in front of them, I guess he meant us, on the bus. Gays, immigrants, women, environmentalists. You never hear any talk about the conditions confronting poor blacks and poor people in general, like you do from the Republican Party every day.
Yeah, exactly. They're really on top of that information. It's so sad when you have to pit, oppressed groups against each other. This isn't a contest, folks.
Right.
We can all suffer together.
Al Sharpton addressed that in his talk, and he said, this is like people in the hospital arguing over who's the sickest. He says, and we got to stop it. You know, it was very, very, very good. In
When
that
he
respect.
becomes the pundit that you're most proud of, it's a little
Oh well,
scary.
I heard that some people stayed away because Al Sharpton was one of the lead organizers. Obviously we've lived in New York a long time. We know he has a mixed record, but
Of total fraudulence.
right.
As Dr. King's
But
body is
He gave
rolling.
he gave a great speech.
He is a
Gave a great speech.
he is a good speaker.
Some good.
Al Charlatan, we call him.
Okay. Some good news from Florida. Alachua County, Alachua. Well, they added sexual orientation and gender identity to their human rights ordinance, so they're making progress. Obviously, the state doesn't have one, and we don't have one in these United States. You know, we don't have an Employment Non-Discrimination Act or anything like that.
And we point a finger at all these other countries.
Now, there's a debate about what's going on at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Are you a veteran?
I'm a veteran columnist.
Of the military. Jean Shaheen, who's a senator from Vermont, she wrote them and said, well, you're going to give benefits to people who are veterans, to their partners, to their spouses, same-sex spouses. And they said there's a wrinkle in the law because it sort of refers to spouses as of the opposite sex. So we're sort of not sure about that. So she's introduced legislation about it. But this is the kind of thing.
If you're saying out gay people can now be in the armed forces, how can you not take care of their
Veterans.
widows and widowers?
It's a different department. Department of Defense is for active duty. Veterans is for. So they're trying to work this out. They haven't closed the door on it.
Wrinkles are very easy to remove these days.
Yes.
Just a little filler.
What do we use?
Filler.
Do you remember that guy Daniel Hernandez who helped?
I can't even remember last night.
Now, Daniel Hernandez. Last night's very difficult, but when you're
And I don't even drink.
when you're talking about things that happened years ago, they're easier.
Okay.
You'll find. He was the guy who helped save Gabby Giffords. He was the intern. Remember, she was shot in the head, the
Yes,
congresswoman
yes.
in Arizona. So he got elected to the school board down there in Sunnyside County or something like that, Sunnyside School Board. Now, 4 of the 5 school board members are facing recall, 2 on each side of an issue, but they're running a smear campaign against him that says he's gay, he's out gay. Put a real man on
So it
the
is still
school
a smear
board.
campaign. Listen to this.
Yes. It's absolutely outrageous.
How could you smear someone who saved Gabby Giffords?
But somebody said in the smear campaign, they're not calling him a faggot, they're calling him LGBT. And that's
well, that's more
progress.
sophisticated. That's a much classier
We
way
don't
to
need an
slime somebody.
LGBT. All right.
They're
Anyway,
appealing to really savvy people there.
that bisexual roundtable at the White House, that's going to be September 23rd. Apparently, it's just for like campaign supporters or something like that. Okay.
Wasn't invited.
No, not nor. Well, should you have been?
Well, I've bought sex. I'm bisexual.
Okay.
I haven't even.
All right.
We'll get to that later.
Now let's talk about marriage news. New Mexico. Two things. They're going crazy down there.
It's like county by county.
Yes, but now it's more than half the state. I mean, these county clerks on their own or local authorities are just saying, we don't see any barrier to people of the same sex getting married, because they have a law there that doesn't have gender in their marriage law. So they're just,
They just forgot to put that in.
We didn't have it here either in New York, but we still didn't win because Bloomberg went to court and stopped us from getting married for 5 years. I don't know if you remember that. He was an impediment to that whole fight.
I do remember that.
As was the governor, Spitzer.
But my favorite story here is that a judge in New Mexico
Yep.
decided that a photographer who refused to photograph a same-sex couple getting married was in the wrong. And the best argument the judge used was, your religion is fine, you can believe whatever you want, but you cannot use your religion to discriminate against other people. And to me, that's profound. Because people always use religion as an excuse to bash gays. You're oppressing me as a religious person by saying I have to approve of gays. Right. No, we're not. Believe whatever you want, but don't use your religion and start the oppression by going after someone else and their rights.
As I have often said on this show, these people who say, my religious beliefs do not allow me to go to your wedding and photograph it, they don't ask the question of divorced and remarried people, which is against the Catholic Church, or other things that might
people
be
that cheat,
whatever.
They
don't even ask the question. It's just anti-gay bigotry is what it is. Now, but this religious, what do they call it? Religious liberty argument is just becoming the big thing for the Catholic Church, for the religious right, for everybody. It's the thing they're going to keep emphasizing, that they shouldn't be forced to do these things, and their liberty is being infringed upon. That's the biggest thing we're going to be fighting.
And this judge cut right through the BS of that argument and said,
but
all kinds of religions, but you can't oppress people.
Now, how can the photographer get out of it? The judge says you must serve same-sex couples on the same basis that you serve opposite-sex couples, in this case brought by the ACLU. So that means he can stop doing weddings entirely. And some of them,
Please do.
Yes.
Go out of business.
Please.
You're making yourself obsolete by cutting out this aspect of your demographic.
Right. And now, going back to who can get married in New Mexico, Taos joined 5 other counties offering same-sex marriage licenses. As I said, it's more than half the state. There's no definitive ruling on any of these marriages, though. People are getting married all over the place every day. But there's no definitive ruling from the state Supreme Court which would say these are valid. But the thing is, the state attorney general won't defend the law.
But it's kind of exciting.
They don't know what to do.
It's a Wild West situation in New Mexico. It's like, you drive around, can I get married here? Yes. Can I get married here? No.
Well, the county that has Albuquerque has it now, Santa Fe.
Those are the big cities.
Counties, issue licenses, so it's all over the place. Now, this one took me by surprise. Walmart says that they're now going to offer domestic partner benefits across the country and around the world. It's not a very progressive
But they're
country.
going to pay $3 an hour.
That's what I was going to
It's
say.
like, wait a minute.
They're not.
No, they're not notoriously kind to their employees. There have been many problems.
I guess you can get domestic partner benefits if you have benefits.
Let's start with the benefits.
I mean, full disclosure, I've been part of a group that has been trying to keep them out of New York because of
Because
their
of the LGBT?
labor practices.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to address that problem.
No.
Okay. Well,
So-
they do sell some good candies and chocolates and deodorants and things. But I think we have enough of these chain places in Manhattan right now.
To work Ann Northrup into this, she's a big fan of box stores and those big stores. And I benefit sometimes when she goes to Costco and picks me up a year's supply of
She
Splenda.
shows up with a U-Haul.
All right, another surprise this week. John Bolton, who was, I think, Bush's UN ambassador. The guy with the big white bushy mustache. Looks a little like me. He is a possible presidential candidate for the Republican Party, and he said, I've thought about it hard, and same-sex marriage is okay.
That's great, but I'm getting a little scared that they're trying to become more liberal so that they can beat us, because they realize the pulse of the country is against them if they stay in their antiquated views.
Do you think in what is it, 2016, in the election, that the Republican nominee is likely to support same-sex marriage? I mean, by then, this may be over for half the country in terms of who's
It might
got
be
the
a
rights.
non-issue, I hope. But I think they want someone who can distinguish from the Democratic candidate. And in the case of Mitt Romney, that was a failure. So now they might be saying, let's rethink things. They were so out of step with what America felt with
Right.
Mitt Romney
Right.
that it's
And-
quite possible they're going to go with the pro-gay.
And he was the moderate Republican candidate.
Yeah, he
compared
was
to
too
some of
moderate for
those-
them,
Some
remember?
of those people. That's why they don't want to have debates anymore, to draw all that stuff out.
That's actually smart of them. Let's not have debates. In
Well-
fact, their candidate should never speak at all.
Well, we have a governor who hardly makes any public appearances or speaks. Andrew
he's cute.
Cuomo. You think he's cute, huh?
Yeah.
I think he's single. I mean, no, he has a partner. That's progress, I guess. You can live with your partner
He helped get
without
gay
marriage.
marriage
and
passed in New York State.
he did. All right, and in North Carolina, on Friday, August 30th, 2 Forsyth County same-sex couples are going to seek marriage licenses, part of 80 that have done it already. That's the great thing. North Carolina's going way to the right.
Yeah.
And they passed an anti-gay
These
marriage.
are the people that watch Duck Dynasty, okay?
Well,
and cried.
It voted for Obama. Well, North Carolina voted for Obama in 08. And then
Okay.
they went, then they're one of the
But now they're swinging the other
only
way.
states that flipped. And a conservative Catholic commentator named Joseph Bottom, for that is his
That's
name.
an unfortunate name. It should be more like versatile.
He has come out for same-sex marriage in a big article. So,
It's kind of a no-brainer at this point. Like, why would anyone have a problem with it anymore?
right.
You look pretty foolish if you're still against it.
Now, Michael, we have to talk about Russia.
Must
You've been
we?
following all this news in Russia?
I have. It's horrifying.
It is horrifying. I went to a forum about it the other night at the community center, and the guy started out. Actually, it was moderated by a bar owner named Tony Giuliano. I didn't know why he was moderating it, since he stocks Stoli and has a partnership with Stoli, and he won't boycott Stoli, which we could debate whether that's a good tactic or not good tactic. But he started out by saying, hey, 76 countries ban homosexuality. Russia doesn't do that technically. I mean, you're allowed to have sex technically. I mean, they don't have a sodomy
As long as they
law.
don't catch you.
No, as long as you don't talk about it to anybody
Okay.
ever.
Well, I'm sorry. I talk about every time I get laid. so.
Exactly. But then, so people got into, well, why are we focusing on Russia when all these other countries have horrible, like Saudi Arabia, whatever you want to talk about?
Well, we're not having
Africa,
we're not having the Olympics, first of all, in Uganda.
and these countries don't have a veto power at the Security Council. That Russia is such an important nation, and the fact that it's chosen to do this is really huge. That's what.
And
that's
they
what,
flipped, like North Carolina we were just talking about? They kind of, it used to be okay in Russia.
Yes.
I went there in the 90s.
Did you?
Yeah, I
How
didn't
was
get
it? How was it
I thought it was
gay-wise?
bleak and boring, but they didn't arrest me for promoting the gay agenda.
Why'd you go?
It was a group trip to go to the opening of a nightclub, and I'll go to the opening of an envelope, no matter where it is, except I would not go to Russia today. And I'm proud of the people who are standing up
And we're going to talk about
and
them.
saying I won't go.
We're going to talk about them, and we'll talk about the news developments this week. Well, this afternoon, I didn't go, but what was scheduled was a Coke dump in Times Square at noon. Coke is one of the sponsors of the Olympics, has been a sponsor since the 1920s. To protest their sponsorship of the Sochi Olympics, Alan Klein said that Coke is sacrificing safety and security of Russian LGBT people for profit. And here's what they're demanding: that they withdraw their sponsorship, condemn workplace discrimination on their website in English and Russian, publish anti-discrimination policies on their Russian website, conduct sensitivity training around the world. It's a lot, but
I agree. Everyone, not just Coca-Cola, everyone involved in sponsoring, attending, promoting this should pull out. Why would we promote something that fosters this type of horrifying impression?
I don't understand why we're still going. I mean, why
It's
we're still
absurd.
having the Olympics.
If you win
there.
the medal, it's a bloodstained medal, basically. And I know the Stoli needs a mixer like a Coca-Cola, but sorry, folks, we're not going to provide your mixer.
Well,
Or
it
we
is.
shouldn't.
I mean, the other thing I did, the first thing I did when I went to Washington was go to the Holocaust Museum because I was with a friend who'd never been there. And it's been open for 20 years, and it really hasn't changed that much. But they have a whole section on the Olympics. And there the Olympic officials are saying, you know, Avery Brundage, I don't know if you remember him.
I know the name.
Because he was the head of the American committee then. He ended up becoming the head of the International Olympic Committee when the Munich killing of the Israelis happened, and he said the games must go on. You know, no matter what happens, the games must go on. So he fought the boycott of the Olympics in 1936, in 35, 36, in Berlin with the Nazis. And you know, I mean, there was a huge boycott movement of don't go. People act like, you know.
But nothing's changed. They didn't boycott it then, and they're not boycotting it now.
But I mean, it's clearly not safe. But so let's talk about some of the stuff that's going on inside Russia there. Putin has declared Sochi a no free speech zone. He has banned protest rallies, anything non-sports, et cetera. Nikolai Alexeyev had planned a protest there. This is the big Russian gay activist who's been on the show. And now he made this proclamation, but the state-owned media in Russia is scrubbing the story from the from their news sites. I don't know, you know, so that he's doing it and he's proclaimed it. Now, Nikolai Alexeyev, who has, you know, he thinks what the Russians are doing is in many ways terrific, because it's drawing so much attention to their fact that it's a big anti-gay country that doesn't support people. It's a funny kind of a thing. He doesn't support the boycotts or all that kind of stuff. But that's not protecting him. His apartment was raided this week, and we have a videotape about that.
Inside this apartment building in Moscow, Russian prosecutors covered their faces after a raid on the country's leading gay activist. Nikolai Alexeyev allowed journalists inside his apartment after the raid. He says prosecutors went through his bedroom, closets, even the bathroom, and took away certain electronic equipment.
You can look here in the bathroom. There are broken tiles in the bathroom. In the other room where my mother lives, everything has been thrown out. The balcony has been dug up. Everything has been totally dug up.
This is what the balcony looked like after the raid.
Do you think that this is all legal? What if they now start raiding flats every day, for instance? Storm the apartment, throw everything out, dig everything up. And who will now clean all this?
Russian officials confirmed the raid was part of an investigation into a complaint made by a member of parliament who is against gay rights. In June, parliament passed a law prohibiting the spread of what the government is calling gay propaganda.
Wow. It's scary. You can't move.
Putin is becoming like a character out of a John Waters film. Like, remember Edie Massey in Desperate Living? Everybody walked backwards today. It's just ludicrous, but
now
it's
you just
not
said
amusing.
That Putin has become a character in a John Waters
Which is
film.
as gay as you can
we have a
get.
picture of. There he is. This was an art exhibit in St. Petersburg with Putin and the Russian Prime Minister in drag. The police seized that portrait of Putin in women's underwear, and one of Vitaly, they're all anti-gay, he's called Rainbow Milanov. They had no warrants, they just came in. I mean, this was in an art gallery in Russia.
First of all, I hope that's on velvet. I think he looks fabulous. It looks almost like the poster for the upcoming Cabaret revival with Alan Cumming.
Now, wait a minute. I mean, I don't know if you've done a blind item about this, but I have a viewer who is very in the know, and we haven't really talked about this in the show because he's not really providing like evidence so much, just what he's heard in very inside circles, that Putin himself is gay, and that it was kept the security forces scrambling all the time to protect him and cover up for him and all this kind of stuff. And I said to my friend, I said, Chris, why wouldn't his opposition use this against him? He said, you're talking about the guy who ran the KGB. And they would be dead. So
Of course. But I mean,
but you haven't heard
again,
this. But you wait a minute. You
I
hear
haven't
everything.
heard it, but I'm not big on my politician sexuality gossip. But again, a self-loathing gay would not be all that shocking, And he's really trying to obviously throw you off the scent in a big way by saying lock up gays.
Well, I mean, the other thing that people said at this panel at the center was, Russia was liberalizing. And this is about Putin coming back to power and then just crushing the opposition in all respects, not just the gay stuff. Everybody, any opposition is
sure.
just being, any protest is being put down and all that kind of stuff. So,
But I love art being used as protest. We learned in ACT UP how to do that, how to use graphic art and imagery.
we used to fight with
To
Giuliani
shame
all
the
the time.
homophobes.
We used to fight with Giuliani
Well, he was
all
in
the
drag
time.
on his own. We didn't even have to paint that.
I know. Then there's the out gay speed skater Blake Skellerup, who's headed for the Olympics, and he says he's going to wear a pride pin. An out sports glad athlete ally in the gay games are raising money for him to send him there. He's from New Zealand. But, you know, again, athletes going.
He's trying to have it
having
both ways. Like, I'm
pride.
going, but I'm going to make a little protest.
Well, you know, Billie Jean King is going to be the subject of American Masters on September the 10th. So there was a conference call with her, and one of the gay outlets asked her about this stuff, and she fudged it. You know, she said, well, you know, it's really up to the athletes. It's a very hard call. But, you know, I don't think it is in this case.
No.
This is really
it's
extreme.
not a hard call. It's so obvious, so easy. And comparing it to Nazi Germany, I've gotten in trouble by doing
Yeah.
that. But before Nazi Germany became Nazi Germany, there were inklings like this.
Did you do that before Harvey Firestein?
No, Harvey actually paved the way for this whole protest, I think, with his New York Times
He
editorial.
kind of did. It's interesting that catalyzed things.
It certainly did.
Yeah,
It was a long
with
way from
Harvey.
kinky boots.
All right, if you think things can't get any worse, now Russia wants to give you free gay conversion therapy. They're going to offer it for free.
With a cup of Coca-Cola.
If you want to change. Not Stoli.
Don't drink the cola.
Not Stoli. The Duma.
They're not giving that out free.
The Duma-
Stoli is $13 in a gay bar.
Really? Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Don't buy it. The Duma, which is the parliament, is considering a ban on gay blood donations. Now we have that still in this country, but they got rid of it. Now they're thinking of putting it back.
That's great. Let's go back to black slaves, too.
I mean, the great thing is that athletes around the globe are being asked about this all the time, about the anti-gay laws. And then there's the movie about Tchaikovsky, right? Did you read about this?
Not the Ken Russell one with Robert Chamberlain.
Richard
Richard,
Chamberlain.
yeah.
Yeah, so it was in the closet then.
And so is Tchaikovsky in this movie.
Well, that's right. They're going to make a Russian movie about him, and they're going to put him back in the... Wait a minute. They're not going to put him back. They're going to say he's going to be portrayed as a heterosexual dogged by gay rumors.
I would love to see their version of the Liberace story. He was
right.
a womanizer.
Los Angeles has a sister city relationship with St. Petersburg, and some LA council members who are gay unveiled a rainbow flag attached to the sign proclaiming the relationship. I didn't realize that LA is the top destination for Russian gay asylum seekers, if you're looking for one.
Because you could kind of hide in the wax museum.
Copenhagen had 10,000 demonstrators versus a Russian law at the Russian embassy. 10,000. It was right before their Pride thing.
Note to self, go to
And
Denmark immediately.
Now, let's talk about Wentworth Miller.
Oh.
I don't watch Prison Break, so tell us about Wentworth Miller.
I only watch Golden
We got
Girls,
a
but
picture
I've
of him,
heard
don't
of
we?
him. Yes, he's 41. He's an actor on Prison Break. We've known he was gay for quite a while.
Oh, yeah?
But he finally came out on the record, and he did so as an act of protest. He was asked by the St. Petersburg Film Festival to make an appearance, and he wrote a very passionate, strong, yet in some ways gracious letter by which he came out as an out gay and also laid down the law that there was no way he was going to Russia right now.
Yeah, he said, I cannot in good conscience participate in a celebratory occasion hosted by a country where people like myself are systematically denied their basic right to live and love openly. So, I mean, that's great, and it's fantastic.
That's the way to handle it.
But you knew about this a long time ago. Did you write about it before?
I had items through the years, but yeah, this letter came out, and I think GLAAD endorsed him, and it became a big deal because coming out and making it an act of activism at the same time is really special.
Well, I'm not a member of the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association, though I have been in the past, and maybe I should be. But they partnered with Stoli at their convention, and they got $10,000 for it. So I especially have a concern because it's a journalist group doing that, especially when there's a big controversy. I mean, people can make an argument that Stoli, some people say it's a Latvian company, it's not really Russian, and that kind of stuff. But dumping the Stoli also is what
But
catalyzed
Stoli
this.
right now has managers, publicists, and marketing people working on how to get them in with the gay groups. Just the way Coors, which has some anti-gay policies,
Right.
Managed to infiltrate the gay bars as a marketing move.
All right, let's move along because we want to get one more international story from Cameroon, and that's where 100 youth posted signs on bars considered to be gay-friendly at a rally amid growing threats and acts of violence against gays. They want stricter enforcement. They've already got the strictest enforcement of anti-gay laws in the world.
Not enough.
Oh, they want more. Wait a minute. Here's what they want. They called homosexuality a crime against humanity.
It is, but I love it.
They claim to be, and here's the kicker, they claim to be marching in memory of a 31-year-old man who was, quote, sodomized and killed by homosexuals. I mean,
Happens
like
all
we're
the
out there. Yeah, we're
time.
out there all the time. Now, in 2006, homosexual acts became punishable by 5 years. They want 20 years.
Okay, well, just ship me out of Cameroon and take me to Denmark.
All right, a couple of AIDS notes because we want to get to Michael's entertainment news. A new study of 200 patients at an HIV clinic at the University of Pittsburgh showed African Americans more likely to sign up for clinical trials. You know, after the Tuskegee experiments of the 30s and stuff like that. Oh no, there's something coming over the sound there. Anyway, they're more trustful of trials. That's great. New study on HPV and oral cancer. You're clued into this. The study found that it linked to poor oral health, swollen gums, missing teeth, and poor dental health. Oh, pity the poor English. It found an association based on self-report. It's too early to say whether brushing and flossing regularly can prevent oral HPV infection.
Well, Calvin Klein got his boyfriend a whole new set of chompers.
Yeah.
He looks much.
And we're going to get to that.
Okay.
All right, so
Dying to get to that.
this Minnesota case about HIV criminalization, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that an HIV-positive man, Daniel Rick, should be cleared of a felony for passing the virus to a partner because he had notified the partner a long time ago. They'd had sex over many years. The guy knew he was infected.
But even beyond that, I think we're at a point now where people are responsible for themselves, should know about HIV,
Yeah.
and just try to have safer sex.
They're still trying to get this guy on other charges. And Pat Robertson, you know, who was coming around on transgender issues a couple of weeks ago, remember? Maybe you don't.
I don't follow the Pat Robertson gossip, sorry.
Well, this isn't gossip. This is what he announced on the show this week. Some in the gay community in San Francisco want to get people, So if they got the stuff, HIV, they'll have a ring. You shake hands, and the ring's got a little thing where you cut your finger, and it's that kind of vicious stuff, which would be the equivalent of murder. And we said it was so bad that the Christian Broadcasting Network edited it out of their online version of the show. You got to put this guy.
That's how Liberace got it.
All right. Now, let's get on to entertainment news. I mentioned Billie Jean King. By the way, there was a big protest in Silver Spring, Maryland, by Equality Maryland, against some place called the Fillmore Star because they had the Mexico City rock rap group Molotov, which is very big in Mexico. I'd never heard of them.
Never.
For anti-gay lyrics. And then there was a big debate online about, do you speak Spanish? What does this mean? What does that mean? But it sounded pretty bad to me. Now,
Maricon is not a good word, okay?
Soul Doctor, I went with some trepidation after the reviews at the Circle and the Square on Broadway, and you had seen it before. This is about everybody knows, the Pop Rabbi, Shlomo
Carlebach.
Yeah. It's about his journey from Nazi-occupied Vienna to Haight-Ashbury with an assist from Nina Simone,
the legendary singer.
Who knew? And it's sort of everybody says it's a cross between Fiddler on the Roof and the jazz singer, but I think you should include Jersey Boys in that because this audience, I have to say, other than going to some funerals, I've never been in an audience of like almost all Orthodox Jews, and they were rocking and rolling. They knew this guy. This was the music of their youth.
Okay, but newsflash, it's doing 28% of the potential gross. It's not long for this world.
I thought Eric Anderson in the lead was pretty sweet, and Amber Iman was good as Nina. It does have some odd dialogue. It's kind of jarring when you're dealing with Nazi occupation and people are cracking jokes about domestic life. But I think it could do a lot for Black-Jewish relations.
It's the best musical I've ever seen about a rabbi who became a pop star.
Wait a minute.
And friends with Nina Simone.
Here's the best line in the show. You're going to sing the Hora in Sodom and Gomorrah?
Great lyric. Sondheim, watch out.
All right. Now, you interviewed, first of all, let's talk about the VMA Awards.
The highlight for me was Macklemore and I cannot suddenly I'm blanking out.
Ryan Lewis. Yeah.
Ryan Lewis, Macklemore and Ryan Lewis. These are a great rap team from the Northwest. And Mary Lambert, who is this lesbian singer. She's out lesbian. She's the new Adele, I guess, but lesbian. And they did their song Same Love, which is one of the big hits of the summer.
Yeah.
This is the song about hey, let gays have equal rights, folks. And in the middle of it, Jennifer Hudson, Oscar winner, came out and sang with Mary Lambert. It was very powerful. And in the middle of all the Miley stuff, which I actually loved, and
Yes.
the Gaga, Katy Perry, all the superficial stuff, here was this powerful message,
Yeah.
which I hope sends the song even higher up the chart.
Did they censor it in Russia? Don't
What
know.
do you think?
Now, you
They were shooting at the screen.
For Musto the Musical, you interviewed Jane Lynch, who is going through a divorce, done.
It's pretty much done. And
So how
I
is
said,
she?
well, Jane, come on, we fought for gay marriage and now this. And she said, well, what about, we have the right to divorce. Where's my parade? She was very cute about it because she's very sardonically
What else?
fun.
What else did you go into? With her?
Well, she's playing a lesbian in a new movie called Afternoon Delight. And I said, does
Ooh.
it take a lesbian to play a lesbian? Can you do it better? And she said, no, that's irrelevant. It's, the best actor is what matters. And that's an important message also because we've always been told you can only play gay.
Right.
We want to be able to play everything, just like straight people have always played gay and won Oscars.
I know, but I think that a lot of the big gay roles get taken from us and given to
They
straights.
do. They do
oftentimes.
because it's considered more brave and courageous. And
And it's
here's your
Oscar-worthy.
Academy Award. You're so brave to play gay.
Right.
That's all going to change along with everything else. But I also asked her if Glee was not the most gay show in the history of TV, and she said no, Will and Grace was. And she said Glee is gay, but Ryan Murphy wanted everything on that screen that kids could relate to, not just gay. She felt Will and Grace was just 100% homo. She's got a point.
All right, and now I don't know why this is news, but you said you wanted to talk about this. We got this picture of a guy named Richard Simmons, the weight loss
Well, he's the
expert in drag. That's Richard Simmons, everybody, if
That's
you can
him.
believe it.
That's him. He's not transitioning, but he did show up at a nightclub on Sunday called Van Dam, which is pretty much a gay weekly event at Greenhouse Nightclub in full drag and got on stage. And I ran it on my Musto the Musical column on out.com and thought, this is unusual. Is he getting more comfortable? Then I looked on his Facebook page.
Finish that thought. Is he getting more comfortable? Is he like? I mean, the guy is like a sort of. I mean, David Letterman would bring him on just to mock him as like a as a gay person.
Right, but guess
In
what?
a
If you
nasty
interview him,
way.
which I have,
Yeah.
and you say the G word, he freaks out. He will run out. He and I were in his trailer a few years ago, and we were having a lovely time. He loves Barbra Streisand, so we started singing He Touched Me together, and we both got really into it, and then he got super nervous and said, interview over. And the same time he did an interview in The Observer where he freaked out and left the room.
What is that possibly about? Is he not aware of?
He's afraid of losing his audience of overweight women in the heartland, but I think they'll be fine with it, Richard. They love you. Like I was going to say, I went on his Facebook page to corroborate this. There are hundreds of pictures of him in drag. He's promoting a new video about hair, and he made himself the model with every kind of hairdo. Full gowns, breasts, the whole bit. So I think he's coming out of the closet fully accessorized. Very soon.
Okay,
Very
I
soon.
hope he gives you the story.
Yeah, I'm waiting, Richard.
And then there's Nick Gruber. Now, Nick Gruber was a young guy who was, we have a picture of him. He was the partner of Calvin Klein for a while, and there was a picture of them actually holding hands. Calvin was never particularly out, but he is now, of course. But talk about Nick Gruber and what he's gone through.
Well, Calvin had been married to a woman, remember? That was like for his image, obviously. And then 2 years ago, he had this big party for Nick Gruber, his new, quote, boyfriend, and he promoted Nick to Anna Wintour and the fashion crowd. There were paparazzi there. Calvin obviously was having a late life breakdown, thinking this was true love, and he needed to come out in a big way. I wrote something saying, Calvin, you're embarrassing all of us. Go back in the closet. Anyway, Nick Gruber since broke up with Calvin. I interviewed him for my Gawker column. And he said, I'm not gay, and it's important for me to tell people I'm not gay. And I said, but you've had relations with men. And he said, no, only with Calvin, which is not true, because there was another guy, John Luciano. Plus, Nick was a gay porn star before all this. And he said, well, I'm straight, but I believe in love. And I said, well, that would make you bisexual. And he said, no, I'm straight. He, after that, was thrown out of a party in Fire Island. What's a straight person doing at the Ascension party in Fire Island? I don't know. I was thrown out for causing a big scene saying, gay people are touching me. I'm straight. I don't want gay people touching me. And security guards, who for his sake I hope were straight, carted him out.
So, Michael, you deal with a lot of troubled people: Richard Simmons, Nick Gruber. I mean,
Putin.
I mean, these are people who we would sit on the sidelines and no one would just have any question about their sexuality because of their involvements. So what goes on in people's heads?
Well, then
and
his
you deal
other-
with celebrities all the time. So what is? I mean, you said about Richard the standard thing. He thinks he's going to lose his audience, but that didn't happen to Ellen. You
No.
know?
Which brings me to Queen Latifah, who has a new daytime talk show and has told the press, I'm not talking about my private life. It's like, don't want you to be a big failure like Ellen. Good, stay in the closet.
Well,
That's good for your career.
But what is that
Well,
about?
you
And
know
I
what?
realize she's African American and there's double stigma and and all that kind of stuff. But
I don't go by the fact that certain people are more homophobic than others. It's across the boards, and people have transcended that career-wise.
well, Lee Daniels actually did give an interview and did say, and he's out gay. Who did the Butler? In fact, it's Lee Daniels, the Butler, is the proper
Well, that's because
title
they had
for
a
the
fight
movie.
over the title of the movie.
Yeah.
The title The Butler had been owned by another movie.
But he actually gave an interview within the last 2 weeks where he did talk about the extreme homophobia that he felt he faced in the.
Well, newsflash, you
African-American
face homophobia just by being gay. So
everywhere.
whether you come out or not.
Yeah.
But he's doing pretty well, so he should be advocating a more positive approach.
Well, I think he does, but I just think he wants to see stuff, and maybe he will be doing that, working within his own community.
But you know what? Nick Gruber's other boyfriend, John Luciano, who he went out with between.
Who is John Luciano? Help me out.
He's a 49-year-old who lives in California. He used to freelance for magazines. He has a lot of money. He's
Any
a
relation
distant
to Lucky?
He is a distant relative, but he says, I'm not mob related.
Okay.
It's
We're
not
all-
my fault.
We're all brothers and sisters.
He called me to say Nick is indeed straight. He is gay for pay. He was in love with Calvin because he was in love with the private jets and the furs and all the fabulous parties.
Well, I mean, you could argue, a young female starlet, who goes out with some, old, geezer who's a producer, is straight for pay in that sense. I mean,
If she's a lesbian, then she's straight for pay.
Well, no, but I mean, or sexual for pay. In other words, that's not what they really want, but they're doing it for other reasons.
So now I have to wonder, like maybe he is really straight and just is a hustler. Though Nick says it was true love with Calvin. So, there's a lot of different
people
theories here floating.
Maybe we should be really happy that they're having this conference on bisexuality at the White House.
Yes.
Because it is the label that most people do not want to own. I mean, Cynthia Nixon had a little trouble getting there in terms of just saying, okay, I'm bisexual.
Right. But it's also a label that some people hide behind because they don't want to say they're openly gay. And I got in trouble by writing about that.
Do you think people still do that? I mean, that they say, well, I'm bisexual. I mean, when I worked at the Hedrick Martin Institute, which runs the Harvey Milk School, we would have kids, their first thing that they would say is they were bisexual. Because they were for some of them were bisexual. But for many of them, it was like they were on the road to like figuring out. So it was seen as less
It's something a lot of
stigmatizing.
people do on the way out of the closet.
But as
they're
adults-
also real bisexuals by the millions,
Yes.
which I got in trouble for not
Jillions.
being very obvious to say I'm aware there are a lot of real
Sure.
bisexuals.
Yes, there are, but I'm saying it's one of those things where people don't identify. They don't say that. I mean, Shirlane McRae, who's the wife of Bill de Blasio, I mean, had a lesbian life and she was public about it. But when it came to saying how she defined herself now, she didn't want to say bisexual, and she got down on labels. Even though when they asked her, well, are you still attracted to women? She says, I'm not dead. So she is bisexual.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
But she'd rather promote herself as like an ex-lesbian. That's not cool.
No.
That's my one problem with de Blasio. Is
Oh, yeah? I
having,
like
having an
Shirlane. I mean-
ex-lesbian wife who won't say she's bisexual.
Well, I mean, again, there's this whole thing. I mean, we went through it also with, are we running out of time here? We got 26 seconds. Ben Whishaw, who just came out, but he also gave this whole lecture to people about labels are horrible and labels are bad and all that. I mean, he's married to a man, so he's gay, so
When you
what?
hear the whole label argument or the fluidity of sexuality, it's usually a gay person.
Okay. Anything else coming up this week? We've got a few seconds.
Fashion Week is coming up, and I'm going to see actually Nick Gruber model in a gay designer's fashion show, which is what straight people do.
Well, Michael, it's been wonderful having you here.
Thank you, Andy.
we will-
We miss you, Ann. Come back, darling.
We will see you next week. Thanks for coming.